Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today I'm here to start on my new mini album featuring the Stamperia Spring Botanic collection. This is going to be an 8.5 by 8.5 mini album, so the interior pages will be 8 by 8 as usual. I'm not going to go over the album construction in this video. I'm just going to go over the customization of the pocket pages, and then we'll insert them at the end. I do have a standalone tutorial just for building the 8 by 8 or 8.5 by 8.5 mini album out on our YouTube channel. So again, this one's going to focus on just putting together the customization and design elements specifically for the Spring Botanic collection. So this is a gorgeous collection by Stamperia. I'm really loving all their papers. We're just getting so much good feedback from everyone on these collections. So I hope you guys like it. This one will be a little bit boring because it's really focused on all the just the interactive elements and not any of the design papers, but we got to get those in to get going. So on page one is going to be a waterfall, and page one is going to actually get applied to the designer paper. So I'm going to set these aside, and then once I've decided what my designer paper is here, we'll come back and do that installation. So again, we're going to focus on installing the flaps that really are adhered directly to the pocket page. Okay, so page 2, this is a fun page. So this page, I've manually made what are some envelopes, and you can do this with pre-made envelopes, but I just wanted mine to match the cardstock that I chose for the pocket page. So I manually made envelopes, and I've duplicated like I do oftentimes. I've used each design page twice in the mini album. So page 2 and page 7 will have the same design elements. They'll just be mirrors of each other. So it is going to include like I said, an envelope. There's a large flap, which is going to be adhered to the left-hand side so that it's opening away from the spine. The envelope will go just under it, and we're going to use the envelope flap to hold it in place. And then on top of the large flap, there is what is basically an 8 by 6 card folded in half, and this will all be held together by the flap of the envelope. So for this page, it turns out that really only one piece is going to get adhered directly to the pocket page. Everything else is going to go on a designer mat. So let's go ahead and get this in. And this is 6.5 by 8. 6.5 by 8. As usual, I have to fuss a little to get my trash can right where I want it. And here we go. All right. I just spent my evening going over some videos that Christina's just completed another mini album for us, and it is out on YouTube right now, and it's featuring the Wonderland collection, which is really pretty. It's got these beautiful blues in it. I love it. Okay, so this is an 6.5 by 8. It adheres to the left-hand side of the pocket page. And I think I mentioned this in the last video. I was going to start putting together the design elements on these pages prior to installing them in the book and try to give it a shot, see if I like it. I might not, but that's what I'm doing for now. But because I'm doing that, it's causing me to do some extra labeling since the pages can get shuffled around. Okay, so just so you know, you'll see some extra prints on here. So this is actually this is the card. This is 8 by 6, and it's scored at 4. This is going to go directly onto this mat, and then the envelope is going to be applied here. And so both of these design elements I'm going to set aside because they're actually going to get adhered to designer paper. So I am going to put my handy dandy little note here, which tells me the sizes of everything and what page they go on. And I use this little white strip just for my notes, but also it turns out these paper clips were leaving marks on my beautiful cream paper. So that's the other reason I've got these little sleeves around around my paper clips. Okay, so that's page 1 and 2. Remember, page 1 we set aside. It's going to be a waterfall. Page 3. Page 3 is not very difficult, but it's a little fussy. And I will show you why. Set my designer sheets pieces aside. So it is, there's my pocket page. It is going to open away from the spine. So page 2 and 3 are going to open like a book away from each other. So we're going to adhere this flap to the right hand side. It's the same size as page 2, 6.5 by 8. 6.5 by 8. Score at 1/2 inch. So you have a finished panel of 6 by 8. 6 by 8. And we're just gonna get this as close to the edge of the page as possible. So that is in. So what is going on top of this flap is what's going to operate like 2 pockets, a tall pocket and a short pocket. Although they're both the same size, one's going to be tucked inside the other. And then I'm going to hold this side down, and I just noticed I don't have any glue in here. I'm going to hold the bottom one down on the third side, and this one I'm going to leave as a complete pass-through so that a tall item can go all the way inside and down through the second flap. So these are both the same measurement. They're 3 by 7, 3 by 7, and then we're scoring a 1/2 inch on either side. And then what I've done is I say score a 1/2 inch on either side, but what I did was I scored a 1/2 inch on one side, on 2 sides for one of them. Then on the second one, I made it just a tiny bit smaller so that it would slip inside of it. And these are actually going to get adhered directly to this flap. But I'm going to have to pause this for a moment because I walked in here without my glue. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my wonderful art glitter glue. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. I shifted everything around when I got up, sorry. By taking off the tape. And this isn't hard, but it's a little fussy. Even when I was designing it, I was struggling, but be patient. It'll come together. Oops, I should have done that before I took the tape off. There it is, yeah. So all I was checking for is to make sure that this is the top. Oh, I actually wrote a note, the top, and then this is the inside. I wrote inside because it's a little bit smaller. So I'm going to take this tape off. I'm going to attach these 2 pieces together and then lay it down. I think. I say that with some level of conviction, although I've never done this, so I may wind up changing my mind as I'm going through it. And so this is the inside pocket, so it's going to be the one that's slightly on top. So all I'm doing is just trying to decide how much overlap do I want between these 2, and not a lot, just a little, maybe a 1/2 inch will do. And I'm using my grid right now to make sure I have straight lines. I'm actually going to shift this forward a little. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not quite 6 inches, and it's an 8-inch page, so I think I'll like the look of that. Although that makes for a pretty deep pocket. I'm going to back off a little bit. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm just pressing these 2 together. Okay. Now there I have it. So I just pressed these 2 together. There's glue or tape on either side. And now I'm just going to lay this whole thing down like it's just one big pocket. Okay, and I'm working at night, not my favorite thing, so it's really hard for me to see my edges. But I'm anxious to get this out. Actually, that's too far over. I'm gonna have to pull that up. Hopefully I can get it up without tearing too much. I'm getting ready to go out of town for a little bit, so I really like to get this video released before I leave. Okay, I'm just sliding it over because I really want it. This is where your eye is going to be drawn to the edge of this sheet, so I really want it flush this way and not necessarily toward the spine. So I'm just going to grab a piece of contrast because these old eyes aren't what they used to be. There we go. There. All right. So as you can see, there's a little bit, it's a little bit shy here. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you want your pocket to slip inside, it really does have to be a little bit smaller, but I'll try to figure out something with a design element to cover that up. But they're in, and so you can see this one goes all the way to the bottom. And this one is going to stop short here, which I haven't put any glue down, but I'll do that right now. I should have done it before I laid it down, but I did not. It's no worries though. And just a thin strip of glue. There we go. We'll press that together. And that is most of page 3. Now what I don't have, or do I? Yeah, I have it. I was gonna say I'm missing a piece, but I'm not. I see it. I gotta take my jacket off. It's too warm in here. So, okay, page 4. Okay, page 4 and 5. That's the center of the book. And I'm gonna do something I like to do, and you've seen it before, where both of these are gonna open away from each other and be mirror images of each other. So there's going to be a large flap here. I'm going to shuffle these papers around a little bit. And a large flap here. And when I say large flap, this is 7 6/8 by 8. 7 6/8 by 8. And then it's scored at 1/2 inch. So you'll need 2 of those, one for 4 and one for 5. And it's kind of a strange measurement, and here's why. In putting the book together, I don't like to waste any of the paper. You get 10 sheets, and actually they started doing something new. The cover and the back now have a coordinated print on the back of them, where before it used to just be white. But some of the elements on the cover are, you know, quite beautiful and can be used. So I try to use everything. I wind up cutting these pieces out and saving them. And then I did the same thing on the back. I wound up cutting out this piece and saving it. And it's a specific size because of the pattern on the paper. So that's why this page turned out to be a little bit wonky. So I cut a strip that it's going to go down here. And then I saved this to go on the inside. So when it's closed, you have this look where you've got matching ends. But like I said, that's where I came up with this 5 6 by 8 measurement. It's a little bit wonky. It's not what I would have done if I was cutting the paper just from a whole sheet. I probably would have done a 1/2 inch on either side. So, so I've done it just so that the flap goes right to the edge, and then you get this frame look. So because I'm laying it out this way, one of the things I have to do to make sure I get the flap in the right place is go ahead and put this strip down right now. So we're going to do that together. And there's going to be one on 4 and one on 5. And I can see I did not ink it, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I got my ink. Let's get this inked up, and then I'm going to use, because it's such a thin strip, I'm going to use glue to lay it down. And all this does is it takes off that sharp white edge. That's all I'm really trying to accomplish. I just don't like the look of that unless it's on white paper, which I very rarely work with. I like it, but most of the collections don't have bright white in them. So I wind up using ivory craft or black. Okay. So I'm going to lay down this decorative strip. And this takes a little bit of patience and some careful measuring because of the way I'm doing it. I had to lay it out several times to decide where does the hinge go, and when I get it in, is it going to cover up all the spiders and just leave out the green strip, which is the look I was going for. And yes, it does. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this down as well. And then the centerpiece we'll come back and do with the rest of the decorator papers. And I meant to ink these ahead of time, but that did not happen. I have to make sure I'm looking to make sure that the words are going in the right direction. I've got the right orientation for the paper. It's so rare that I work with a pattern that doesn't have orientation anymore. It's becoming second nature. When I first started making mini albums, I did my fair share of putting things in upside down because I wouldn't stop and check the orientation of the paper. Well, and not only that, but I'd cut it before I checked the orientation of the paper, even worse. So you can't recover from that unless it's square. All right, so that is in. And then this flap is going to lay down just like this. Beautiful. And it's hiding part of this, this bug print, which is unusual, but I like it. So now I'm going to do this the reverse way of how I would normally do it. I would want to butt it up against this piece. But my goal here is to have the edge of this sheet come right to the edge of the green here. So I'm actually going to lay it down this way and then back into it. And you might get some top of my head here while I try to get this in. Got a little bit of a ding there on the corner, unfortunately. Yeah. It looked like it was bigger or taller than the other sheet, but it's not. Just an illusion. All right. I think I've got a good handle in this. I'm going to put some glue because I think this is a case of where I'm going to need a little time to wiggle. To get it in just the way I want it. There we go. That's in. I'm gonna press that down. Okay, so that's what it's gonna look like, and we're gonna do the same thing again for the next one. Then we're gonna set it aside, and we will come back and add designer layers to this. And this is actually what's gonna go here, so you get some idea of what it's gonna look like. And then this is another piece that's going to lay on top. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. We're going to go ahead and do page 5. The same thing. We're going to add those 2 strips and the large flap. I'm just making sure I've got my my strips going the right direction with the actual pocket page. That's one of the nice things about having it in a book. You can't mess that up because it's attached to a spine on one side. So, different. Although I do like the idea of these being separate. I feel like I get things laid down flatter. And then I can also, up until the last minute, decide what order I want to put my pages in. I've done that already for the sake of this video, but for you designing at home, it gives you a lot more flexibility to keep changing your mind right up until the end. Okay. And I'm using a 1/16 of an inch inset or border, depending on how you want to phrase that. So it's a very tight, snug border. which I like. It's my preference. I want to see designer paper, not blank cardstock. So this has to go. Oh, I gotta look at this and make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, so that is that way, and this is this way. Okay, I want to make sure that when I open both of these, and this is the flap that'll go here, that my bugs are right side up on both pages, and they are. But an easy thing to mix up if you're not installed in the book. I should probably put an up arrow on my my base mats as a cheat for me to help me. Okay, and you'll see this one goes a lot faster after we kind of learn the process with one. Okay, that's in. And again, like I said, we're gonna do it the reverse of what I normally do. I'm gonna line up these edges and then back into where it lays on the pocket page. Add a little glue, give me some time to maneuver if I need it. Got a little heavy there, so I'm gonna spread that out. Okay. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, so there we are. That is page 4 and page 5. And then we're gonna have one more flap on both these pages. And they're going to be from the top down. So we're gonna go ahead and install these right now, since they'll be applied directly to this flap. And I'm gonna do my normal, turn it upside down so I can get it centered, roughly anyway. And I'm not measuring, I'm just eyeballing. The same thing on page 4. Lining it up with the top of the page, which is pretty straightforward, especially when you don't have to worry about left and right because it's inset. Okay, so these two, I collected my designer pieces, page 4 and 5. These will all get layered on in the next round. Get my clip on, and then there's one more piece, and I have gone back and forth on this, on whether or not I want a pocket on the outside flap, which would fit directly here inset, or if I want to put a pocket inside. So I'm kind of going back and forth. I've sized it, I've scaled it so that it can be applied directly to the inside. But the challenge is, if I apply it to the inside, do I really want my pocket coming over what I so painstakingly designed these two edges to look like? And I don't think I do. So here's what I think I will do. I'm going to apply a pocket to the inside of the inside, and I'm going to have it inset so that it doesn't affect this visual. Okay, that's what I think I'll do. Yeah, so I'm going to measure it to fit across this flap, and I haven't done that. Like I said, I scaled it so that it could go across the whole thing because I was still trying to decide if I wanted the pocket to go across the whole inside. And I don't. I'm going to size it down and I'll be right back. We can get those installed. Okay, I'm back. I trimmed down my 2 pieces, and these are 2.5 by 7 1/8. 2.5 by 7 1/8, and it will fit on the inside of this panel just perfectly. What I've decided to do, because there's already some bulk on the front, is to make this a flat pocket so there are no flanges. It's going to be adhered directly. So I use 1/4 inch score tape. It's going to adhere directly to the page, and I'm going to run a strip of glue across the bottom. And then, because I don't have my designer sheet in yet, I'm going to go ahead and leave my tape in place, just glue across the bottom, and then once I've slipped in my designer paper, I'll pull off those tabs and stick it down. So we're going to do this on page 4 and 5, and again, this is 2.5 by 7 1/8. 2.5 by 7 1/8. And it's going to go on the inside of the top flap, or the side flap. There is a top flap, but oops, my tip dried a little bit. Hang tight. Oops. There we go. And that's just a nice thin strip of glue. I'm going to adhere it directly to the bottom of this page, and I'm just lining up my corners and making sure there's no interference with the score line of the flap. All right, and then we're not going to take the tape off. We're going to leave that in place until we get our designer paper put in. Okay, so that is page 4, page 5. One more time, 2.5 by 7 1/8. 2.5 by 7 1/8. Again, it's getting adhered to the inside of the side flap. Let me get my cap out of the way. Okay, once I get these in, we are going to apply some magnets for closures. A little bit of glue came out. Here we go. So, I'm loving it. All right, so these are going to go open away from each other. I'm going to go ahead and put in some magnets to hold these in place. And I'm thinking out loud, trying to decide, do I want to put magnets here and here as well, or some other kind of fastener? I think I might want to tie these down. So I may not put a magnet in here right now, but we are going to use something to hold the larger flap in place. Once the flap goes in and you get designer paper on both sides of this and both sides of this, it gets pretty heavy, and then we've even got a pocket. So it's a good thing, I think, to hold it in place if you can. Now we already have designer paper here, so we got to make sure that wherever we place our magnet, it's clear of this, because I'm not going to lift this up to get a magnet under it. So I'm going to go ahead and I think lay my magnet down on this side where I know I'm clear of that designer paper, and then find its matching location. Everything is sticky. Okay. And then I'm going to leave the tape on these. And, oh, did I do that right? Nope. Didn't get enough press. Okay, that should have, yeah, now that. There we go. So our mate is in. Doesn't feel very strong. Maybe it's just me. And again, I'm going to open it and make sure I'm completely clear of this designer plate paper. Plus, I want to make sure I don't have a bubble on the edge of the paper I put in next to it. So I am insetting it quite a ways. So even if I wanted to leave a small gap between the two pieces of paper, I still won't be able to see it. flat. Okay, so these are now in. So again, I'm not sure how I want to hold these down yet. I may put some ribbon on the edge of this and the edge of this and hold it down that way. I haven't decided yet. So I'm going to leave them open for now so I have that flexibility. When I come back with the designer paper and see what it all looks like laid out, I will have a better idea of how I want to keep those closed. I'm definitely going to do something. I won't leave them just floating around. I just don't know what yet. Okay, so that's 4 and 5. And let's see. Here is, that's 4 and 5. So that is page 6. And then here are the elements for page 6. So I have to think about how they open up. So 4, 5 will close this way. So this will be the spine. I should mark that. Actually, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to put a small note on the side that the spine is going to be on for each of my pocket pages so that I make sure that my flaps are opening away from the spine. And I'll be right back. Page 6. So I'm going to have a large flap. And this is the same as page 2. So it has a large flap and it's going to have 2 pockets that go on top of it. By laying down the large piece, which is 6.5 by 8. 6.5 by 8. So you're going to score a 1/2 inch along the 6.5 inch side. And you'll have a finished mat or a finished flap of 6 by 8. And this is the spine side, and I always want my flaps to open away from the spine. So it's going to go on the reverse side. And why I didn't put that notation here earlier, I don't know. It's going to save me a lot of checking and double checking. And hopefully save me from putting things in the wrong way. Okay, so as I had discussed before, these are both the same size. They're 3 by 7. 3 by 7, is that right? Yeah, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on either side. And then what you're going to do is make sure one of them is just smidgen larger than the other, or smaller, depending on how you look at it. So, and that's what I did here. So that one will slip right over the top of the other, and you'll be able to apply them as a single unit. So this is the one that goes inside. This is going to be the front. I'm going to get my tape off. I'll adhere these 2 together and then apply the whole thing as a single unit when I'm finished. And then this is pretty much it for the interactive pieces. I said it and now I've got to double check it again. Page 8 is the same as page 1, and page 1 is a waterfall page, so everything actually gets applied to some designer paper. So this is the last interactive page that we'll work on before we start laying down designer paper, which will be in our next video, and hopefully during the day so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to put a bead of glue on the bottom and adhere this to the flap. I noticed one of the things when I was working with this album, I don't do cream very often at all. I think it looks lovely, but I don't use it very often. Most of the time I use black. I just think it goes so well with the graphic collections, which is what I work with mostly. But one of the things I was noticing is, man, it is hard to keep this paper clean. So that's a bit of a trick, I think. Now I'm going to line it toward the edge of this paper. I think your eye is going to be drawn here away from the spine. So that's where I'm providing your guidance, and I'm going to use a contrast sheet. And lay that down. Good, good. I did a better job on this one. It's much tighter in terms of how it fits toward the spine. So now that I see this one, I'm a little disappointed in the other, but it will have to do. Okay, so that is all we're going to do. You know what I just did? That really stinks. I just put page 6. I just put page 7 on page 6. So that's okay. I'll flip it and I will put this on page 7. But that's interesting that I did that. Oh well, such is life. C'est la vie. I said we were done, but we're not. We still have one more page, page 7. So page 7 is like page 2. And it has the envelope that I made. And it also has a flap, which I want to go this way. So the flap is going to go on the right-hand side. This gets applied to the flap, so it's just a card that opens. And then this gets applied to the inside, all of these pieces on top of designer paper. So the only thing we're actually going to install right now is this large flap on the right hand side, and it is 6.5 by 8. 6.5 by 8. And it goes right here. And just to give you a visual, this is a card that will be applied to the top of the large flap, like so. And then this envelope will be used, and of course I'll put some designer paper on it. This flap will be used to hold all of this in place. So that is the end of page 7, and then page 8 is a repeat of page 1, which is the waterfall, and everything gets applied to designer paper. So that is all we're going to do for the interactive pages for the Stamperia Spring Botanical mini album. So I'm going to sign off here, and I'm going to let you glance at my beautiful paper one more time. And then when we come back, we'll be using the designer papers, and we'll design each one of those interactive elements, wrap up on how we're going to keep some of the flaps closed, and then that should be it. And we also still need to make inserts for the pocket pages. So that's kind of where we're at. And I'm hoping to get the designer papers in the next video. If we can't finish it, it might be 2 videos, and then we'll actually need to insert all the pages to a finished album. So that's where we are today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Loving the collection. I hope you're enjoying it too. And again, the next video will cover all the designer pages on top of the interactive elements we just built. Thanks.